Hello and welcome everybody to the 19th stream of DBB Live. Hope you've all had a great day so far. Ready to talk some Detroit basketball. I'm Wes Davenport from Motor City Hoops and Detroit Bad Boys, and I am joined as always by the Aussie himself, Jack Kelly from Detroit Bad Boys. Jack, how you doing? I know you're at the beach, so got to be pretty good.
I'm good, Wes. I'm pretty good, man. Yeah, down the coastline, about an hour and a half out of the Melbourne CBD. So yeah, nice to get out of the city and just sort of chill out. Even though it's winter here, it's I don't know. I love getting out of the city and amongst the nature. So yeah, excited to talk some Pistons hoops, talk about some we've somehow found some things to talk about. So um yeah, excited to dive into it.
Yeah, me too. I mean, we always find stuff to talk about, but this week it actually felt like there was some, I guess, late developing things that did pop up, at least to keep us slightly entertained here for the next hour and a half, maybe. And guys, hey, just make sure you do throw your questions here in the chat. We're going to get to them shortly, but wanted to open with this one, Jack. Some trade talk, and not really a real report per se, but just a larger NBA personality kind of speculated that the Pistons could be a team that would be interested in Pascal Siakam if he were to become available at the trade deadline, and provided the Pistons were, close to play-in contention, right? Wanting to make a push in that way. So obviously that would depend on a few other factors as well. But I was just curious kind of where you fell on the whole Pascal Siakam idea in general, and if there are any other names that might interest you in terms of like star hunting later on around the deadline or even next offseason.
So I was just looking it up then. I believe Pascal is a free agent potentially after this upcoming season. Um, correct me, someone in the chat, correct me if I'm wrong. And I believe he's around 30 years old. So I actually think Pascal, he'd be like an awesome fit on this team, just with sort of like, just if we're just talking purely on court, forget about like contract and all that sort of stuff. Like, and probably what it would take to potentially trade for him. Like that sort of hybrid four that can like create for themselves to an extent, play make a little bit when they're engaged defensively, like be disruptive. He's a good size. He's a pretty dynamic scorer. He fits the mold of like that veteran type all-star player that could come in and really help the Pistons make a push up the standings. So I think from just like a fit perspective, just like we talk about Siakam in a vacuum, like that would be pretty cool. But then if we factor in the other stuff, um, like I feel like he might just be a touch old. And like I'm cautious of saying that because I don't just like I'm aware of the fact that this young core that the Pistons have is probably going to look considerably different in 2 to 3 years when this team, we hope, is actually pushing for like Eastern Conference finals or just, like top four in the East. Like, I think there is a trade coming of some sort. Like, I think it's very rare you see a young core stay together and then they sort of, you know, are in Eastern Conference finals or conference finals repeatedly. Like, I feel like there's a trade there. So I just feel like Siakam might be a touch old. And just the contract situation, like, do you want to extend a guy like Siakam for 4 years? Let's say it is around $40 million a season. Like, I don't know, just with the new CBA and that sort of thing. So I don't know. What are your thoughts?
So I was actually like Siakam's in a list of guys that are, I would say, capital S star players that I actually would really like if things start going well for the Pistons to maybe take a run at the trade deadline or maybe next offseason. And I think what I keep going back to with that kind of idea is what the Celtics did with Al Horford, right? Because for a while they had this whole young core, but they went and spent big money on Al Horford, and he became that immediate star with a really good veteran presence that came in and made an impact right away. And then obviously as well, he's now had a long term impact on their, I guess, team as a whole. They even brought him back to now just be kind of a mentor, defender, leader type guy. So I think I've got a few names that also fall into that category. Maybe down the road. I wanted to run them by you to see if you were interested in any of them. Julius Randle, so he's got 3 years left on his deal at about 27 million per. Paul George, 2 years left, 47 million per. DeMar DeRozan, he's an expiring this year. Carl Anthony Towns, he's about to have a massive contract, about to start a 4 year, $55 million per season contract. And then Lauri Markkanen is a guy on a pretty cheap deal right now. So I think it'd probably take a little bit too much to get him. But he's coming up on 27. He's getting a little bit older now. He's a great shooter. I think it'd be a nice fit. Any of those names of interest to you, I guess?
Um, I like Paul George would be really cool. I just his injury history plus like the Clippers situation with like I find like the Clippers with the situation they're going into with their new stadium in a season or so and wanting to like I just can't really see that one happening. And also the injury history just
Yeah.
scares the hell out of me and not playing back to backs, all those types of things that if you're bringing in a veteran with a young team, you sort of want you want them playing. So like
Right.
um man, I get why people are so down on Karl Anthony Towns. Like his contract as well, like scares the hell out of me. Do you have it in front of you? Because it's obscene.
About 55 million in annual value per
Yeah,
year for
so
4 years starting next season. Yikes.
that's a lot of money for a center that's not particularly known for their defense. But his offense, he like he is truly a special like offensive big man, sorry, like in what he can do, space the floor, like with the sort of the roster Detroit have now. Like I know we have Jalen Duran, but Karl Anthony Towns is like a proven like all-star. I'm not sure if he's made all NBA, but like I don't know. I still think there's a really good player there, and I know he's had his downs in the playoffs, and there have been some low lows for him in terms of disappearing and that kind of thing. But I don't know, maybe change of scenery. Yeah, I could see like a pick and pop big man like with Cade or just a spacing he'd provide Cade and Jaden Ivey. Like, and it sort of just
Mhm.
allows you to play maybe Asar Thompson with those guys. If he doesn't come around as a shooter, like it's not as big of an issue. Like he gives you a lot of flexibility on the offensive end, which I think's pretty important. So yeah, look, I don't think it's going to happen at all, but Carl Anthony Towns does jump out to me a little bit because I do think he's been a bit like a player that, look, deservedly so with his playoff disappointments, has sort of gotten shat on. But I feel like
Yeah.
he there's still a really like he's a really, really good player. Like um and maybe under like the leadership of someone like Cade, I don't know, maybe he could thrive.
So give me your feedback on probably my favorite fit on the list here. Next off season, not at the deadline. It'd be next off season because I think you'd probably be potentially trading a first round pick for him. Julius Randle, very reasonable deal with the new CBA coming in. He's getting about 27 per. After the season ends, he'd only have two seasons left on it. He's coming up, I think he's 28, 27, 28, something like that now. So it wouldn't be too old for an extension. And I think he's a pretty nice fit in that front court if the shot can be less streaky, which meh, we'll see.
So my thing with Julius Randle, which I can't stand, like I think he's a very productive player. Like I think he's shown in the past 2 to 3 seasons, like under Tom Thibodeau, like he can produce. His numbers last season were excellent. He's improved like dramatically as a 3-point shooter and not just someone shooting off the catch, like someone who can shoot off the bounce and create for themselves. But
Mhm.
I cannot stand one, like if he doesn't have it going, like his attitude, like I don't know, like he can really like sulk it up. Like I like the contract. I think he's a really good player. Like another guy who I think sort of gets a bad rap a little bit, considering how much they've produced and sort of like he's been like Jalen Brunson was excellent last season, but Julius Randle was also
Mhm.
really, really good. I just I don't know. He strikes me as the guy that would come to Detroit. He'd be like the older veteran. I don't know if you want to put that next to Cade. Like just watching the Knicks a little bit last season, like if he doesn't have his shot falling, like he takes some horrific shots. Like he's just like pulling up step backs
Yeah.
from three, like stuff that sort of just really like he's a ball stopper, an absolute ball stopper. And I don't know. I just yeah. I'm interested to hear your thoughts.
What intrigues me with him is I think he's like severely overcast right now with his role with the Knicks.
Yeah.
Like he's their go-to guy, and he should not be a go-to guy. I think at best he's probably a second, probably ideally a third go-to guy on offense, right? Not the top dog. So I think what's intriguing is you get a guy like that kind of coming into middle of the prime. He knows that he can't be the guy to lead it by himself. So he's going to come in and he's going to have Cade and Ivy probably ahead of him in the pecking order, focus on some other things. Like I think he's a little bit of an underrated passer at this point. I think that's something he could do fairly well. I don't mind the diva thing. I don't mind it. I think it's fun if you're winning. I think if you're losing, it's a lot less fun. But I don't mind the diva thing. I'm down with it. So I don't know. I'm intrigued with it.
Look,
Defense, you kind of is a wash with him. You'd be trusting Duran quite a bit to figure that out.
that's that. But the thing with Randall is like he's a guy who can grab and go and push it in transition. Like he's
Mhm.
very quick for his size and strength. So like look, I think he's a really good player. I just the diva thing and the attitude thing, I don't know. But I am with you. I think he's been miscast
Fair
in New
enough.
York for sure. For sure. Like I agree with you. But part of me thinks like he wants that and thinks he is that. Well, most players probably do think they're the number one guy, especially if you produce like Randall. So my thing would be, would he be willing to take a step back to a guy who's probably 8 years younger than him in Cade and sort of yeah. So if he did all that,
Fair
then
enough.
maybe. I tell you what though, if that does happen, Wes, the Pistons Twitter will be I will not be going on it for a few days. Because Randall's one of those guys in the league that I
Oh
just swear
man.
fan bases love to sort of clown. So
Yeah, because it'd be like if it were to happen, I'm envisioning it'd be the Pistons' first round pick next year, which would ideally be kind of late lottery. So, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, somewhere in there, for Randall. And you just kind
yeah,
of eat
that
the cap space and maybe send like a Livers or some other lower tier
yeah,
young player that the roster has back because they might just want to go a different direction than seeing
yeah,
what is it now, 4 of him leading the show. Um,
yeah.
I think a lot of people would be up in arms, but I'd be happy.
I bet you would. um yeah, I don't think I have any other thoughts on those guys. Um but I did want to have a chat about the schedule. And I know you don't have many thoughts about it,
All you, my
but
friend, go for it.
obviously the sked I believe the schedule dropped yesterday. Is that correct for you guys? Or
Yep.
this something like that. So I don't have a whole heap of thoughts, but the 2 to 3 things I wanted to discuss were Detroit having the most back to backs in the league with 15, I believe. Um, I can't imagine the Pistons have 15 and everyone else has 10. So, but so the Pistons have 15 back to backs, and then the other main thing was that they play 9 of their last 11 games on the road. So I have some thoughts. But I was just wondering, does any of that sort of alter your expectations, or to you, the schedule's the schedule? They'll win the games they deserve to win. Like at the end of the day, they play 41 home games, 41 away games. Like, did you have any thoughts just before I get into it?
This is gonna be all you. I'm like the worst person you could ask about this because whenever I played, I didn't care at all what our schedule was. Like outside of just like, oh, cool, we're playing this rival. Like I have to wait 3 weeks to go play and try to beat this team that I've wanted to beat all off season. Like anything outside of that, like I didn't care about any any tight schedule games or if we're closing on the road is you play where you're going to play. You had no control over it. You just want to go out and win. So I'm the worst person you could possibly ask. I had no thoughts. I like briefly looked through the schedule to
Look,
see if I could make any games, and that was the extent of it for me.
yeah.
So take the floor, please. Let the people know what they should be feeling.
Well, to be honest, I still think the Pistons are at a stage of their development and everything where I don't think it matters a whole lot. So, like, the 9 of the last 11 is pretty brutal on the road, but that also means they have 2 6-game homestands, one in late Jan and one in mid-March, where they're going to have to stack up some wins. But ultimately, like, on the flip side, like, I feel like teams are going to come into Detroit, and if they're on a back-to-back, they're going to rest their stars. Like that, I still feel like that's going to be a thing for at least in the first half of the season until the Pistons have the team they're going to be this season. Like, so on the flip side, they're going to have a chance to win those games where players rest their stars. But yeah, ultimately, I really don't think it matters a lot, because I personally, I would love if they're in playing contention, like, because that would mean there's been like some guys have hit, some guys have taken leaps, the veterans are playing really well, or they've made a trade potentially that's brought in a better player. But to me, like, I don't see them in that race, just right now. So hence why it didn't bother me too much. The only thing I was shattered about is I'm trying to plan a trip, I haven't got anything set in stone, but trying to plan a trip in April to Detroit, and they're only at home for like one game. So I was a little bit selfishly upset because I wanted to try and get in there for like a 3-game homestand. And it looks like I'm only going to be able to get like one game in Detroit if I go. So that was the main thing I was pissed off about, to be honest.
Fair enough.
But
Fair enough. Yeah,
yeah,
none of the
I
dates
guess
looked all that promising for
the
me to
question I
get
wanted
out
to
either.
ask, yeah, I mean, I think I already know the answer, but did that affect your expectations at all in terms of win loss?
No, if they're gonna beat a
And
team, they're
just to
gonna beat a
refresh,
team. If they're gonna lose, they're gonna
yeah,
lose. You know, like I even the back-to-back stuff. Half the time, that's advantageous for this Pistons team because this Pistons team is not seen as being very good. So on a back-to-back, you know you might be getting oh, they're tired. Let's sit out our shooting guard for just a rest day. You know, on the team coming in to play the Pistons on the back-to-back. Like I don't know. It didn't change
love it.
my expectations at all.
No, I was the same. And just to refresh any new listeners, what is your expectations right now for win loss, or how many wins?
Whoa. Wow, this was actually a question. So I'll pull it up. This was from Neo Theone. Hopefully we said that right. How many wins?
So
I'm going 28.
I was going to say 28. I'll say 29 to mix it up. The 28 to 30 for me is what I think. So we're aligned
It's a
once
big
again.
mix-up, Jack. Huge mix-up. Really big change. One game difference.
But I really think just like fair, like, I know there's a fair portion of people that are expecting play in, and like, I think I get why people are. Like, I can see what like, I think that is a possibility. I just don't have a high percentage on it. But I really even think if they get 28 to 30, like, that's a really good improvement. That's an 11-game improvement. That's nuts. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, we've spoken about it a fair bit this offseason, but it's going to be about what they look like on court and reducing those meaningless games, particularly after the All-Star break. Like, I just want games that are like competitive, and we're not having the Motor City crews run out there to fill out the back end of the bench. Like,
Yeah.
so,
Yeah. Exactly.
all right.
Well, and this is one of those
And the
things that like
oh, yeah.
sorry, one second. This is one of those things where like this can change. At least I think this can change a month or 2 months into the season. Like once we actually see this group of guys play, once we actually see Cade play, our expectations are going to change from there. But with what we're working with right now, we're basically looking at a roster that's very similar to last year, and you're getting, a few really good veterans there that, I mean, altogether, I don't know if they're equating to 10 additional wins on themselves. And, Cade was probably only this past season another 5 wins himself, right? That they're not going to win you these games alone. So once we start to see how the team actually looks and if they end up looking quite a bit better and like a lot of these guys really improved, then like, yeah, sure, maybe we could start looking into the 32, 35 play-in range somewhere in there. But I just feel like it's a lot to ask based on the very limited information we have currently to say, yeah, they're gonna, improve their record by 13 or more wins. It just seems
Yeah,
like a lot to ask.
yeah, definitely. And I just wanted to note one other thing with the schedule for those that might not have had a chance to look at it. The Pistons, it'll say they have, I think, 4 nationally televised games, but 3 of those are NBA TV. The one nationally televised game on ESPN they have is against the Houston Rockets, which I was happy to see because I know then they did that in Cade and Jalen Green's rookie season. That was a fun game. So I was glad that's on national TV. So that is something to look forward to. But for those that were sort of upset about the national TV coverage, like, come on, come on now. If you've watched the Pistons in the past decade, every time they've been on ESPN, they get blown out. So I, I
It's true.
remember in Cade's rookie season, I did like some study on like the nationally televised games Detroit had had, and their record since like 2012 was really bad, and the average margin of defeat was like 15 points. So it's a good thing they're on national TV. I wouldn't be too upset.
Yeah. Do you remember
And
that
so
one random win
yeah,
though, right after the Blake Griffin trade at the deadline, where Stanley
against the
Johnson went off
Cavs,
against the Cavs for no
yeah,
reason? Like it
I
was a G
remember
League team and Stanley Johnson and they
against
won.
LeBron. I remember that. Yeah, they had like I'm pretty sure Andre had like a 2020 as well, but like I remember
Yeah,
that game. Last thing I want to hit before we
random.
dive into some questions was there was a video or a clip released from the Rico Hines runs in LA of Jaden Ivey having some issues being defended by, I believe it's Marcus Noel, who's 5'6".
Hey,
Is Jaden Ivey
five foot
now a
eight,
bust?
generously, generously. Is he a bust? Great question.
Is Jaden Ivey's is he a
No,
bust?
no. Jaden Ivey's not a bust. I think, to me, I think that doesn't matter for two separate reasons. One, it's an off-season run and it's one clip of one possession. So like I'm sure there were other possessions where Jaden Ivey scored on him. I'm sure there were other stops that Noel had. Like it's going to happen, right? It's a run where they're doing a bunch of isolations. But on that topic, I really don't expect ISO Jaden Ivey to be a frequent play call this upcoming season. Like not even a screen. There was no one coming to help him in this clip. It was just, hey, go get a bucket. I don't expect that to happen quite a bit. So not only do these like off-season runs not really matter to me like at all, but also it wasn't a play that he's going to do in an NBA game, at least not frequently. So I didn't care and then I had negative care. If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, like I'm with you. Like I don't know. I don't care. We've spoken about this a few times. But like I was very like watching Cade do what he did in the USA scrimmage is on a whole nother level to some runs at UCLA
Yeah.
in the summer.
Yep.
Um, my question was out of that was going to be, is there anything you look for in these runs aside just some entertainment? Like, is there a part of a player's game you think, um, yeah, is there something you look for that they're doing in these runs that you think maybe translates to the NBA or gives you an insight into something they've improved on or been working on? Basically, do you have any takeaways?
Honestly, not really. I like when the player names show up at these runs because it means they're still playing a bunch of basketball, so that makes me feel good. and then obviously, hopefully that they stay healthy, right? That no one got hurt during it, but like outside of that, in terms of like tangible takeaways from pickup games in a practice gym, not so much. At least I don't put too much weight on it.
Yeah, I agree with your thing about it's awesome to see. Like, it looks like I think I saw Jalen Duran there, Isaiah Stewart. Looks like all that core four players we talk about were there. Plus, I assume there'll be some more from Detroit. So I think that willingness to show up, that connectivity as a team, like it shows they've got some chemistry there to show up together. Like that's cool. But on court, maybe it's funny because this sort of goes against what I just said about Jaden Ivey, but maybe the only thing I look for is like that some improvement on their handle, their dribbling. But I mean, even still, these runs, I feel like as much as the players are putting in effort, I feel like that they're definitely not defending it 100% because I feel like they don't want to injure each other. Like there's like an unwritten rule there, I feel like, where you go hard, but you don't go too hard because the last thing you want is like a busted ankle or something worse. So yeah, I look, we've seen Andre Drummond roll up and hit threes all summertime, and then gets to the season, and it's just not a translatable thing. So, um, yeah, aside the entertainment and some chemistry stuff, like not a lot to take out of it, in my opinion. But it's fun. I love that we get to see this stuff. So, yeah,
For the pure entertainment value, I actually prefer the absolutely random gym runs where you see like one NBA player and then almost no other NBA players out on the court. Just as the reminder of like, oh yeah, like those guys are really good. Like Andre Drummond can walk into a random court. He's hitting half court jumpers. It doesn't matter. They're all
yeah,
swishes. And he's not a shooter. Where's this coming from? Well, he's playing
yeah.
nobodies. That's why. He's just that good.
No, I'm with you on that. The other thing, the last thing is like, I would probably, actually, I mean, ultimately with these runs, you only see highlights as well. You don't really see many of the missed shots and that sort of thing. So, yeah, another reason it's sort of hard to take away a lot of solid, I guess, information from them. All right, should we get into some questions?
Yes, sir. Pull it up. All right, first
All
one.
right, we've got a few queued up here. So, thanks everyone.
Are you introducing them or do you want me
You
to?
go, Wes. I was just going to thank everyone for the questions.
Yeah, no, we appreciate it
You
for
go.
sure. So, this first one. John Buck, do you feel that this year's success in the amount of wins will depend especially on how quick we can establish our team defense? If so, would you say that that will hinge upon Asar Thompson's development?
Good question. Well thought out question. The first half of it, I think the defense will be pretty crucial in terms of how many wins this team does rack up because I think, and that's not to say I think like the offense don't worry about that, but I think the foundation of like a good team starts in the defensive end, and it's so. And I think team defense and obviously defense as a whole has been an issue for this team the past couple of seasons. So yes, I definitely agree with that first part. And then in terms of Asar, I don't think his development and how um, how good of a rookie season he has will sort of impact the win loss record. Like I think if he has like an outstanding rookie year, like in his top three in rookie of the year voting, like I think that'll add some a win or two maybe. But if this team's relying on Asar's development for wins and losses, not that I think that's how you frame the question, but I I don't think they should like a reliance on Asar is going to be beneficial to Detroit's sort of win-loss. I think it's going to come from team defense, like you've stated in the question, and then guys like Cade Cunningham, the veterans playing to the level we expect them to play to, and yeah, one of Jaden Ivey and Jalen Duren sort of popping and having a really good second season.
Yeah, I think I agree with all that. I mean, I do think that the amount of wins is definitely going to depend quite a bit on defense, right? I mean, they need to improve on that end of the floor. That's no secret. So if they can do that, that's going to drive a lot of wins. But in terms of just putting pressure on the rookie to really push and drive that improvement, I think that's just a lot to ask and a lot to expect out of them. It'd be great if he did, right? I think you just count that as bonus. So I wouldn't say that it's hinging on his ability to come in and be a lockdown wing defender, right? I mean, Cade's a pretty good defender on ball. Jaden Ivey's made some improvements. Looks like on ball, if he can up his off ball awareness as well, that'd be huge. Bojan putting in full effort on that end would be great as well, which he's done in the past. And just because they were kind of bad last year, it looked like he maybe didn't as much. And then, I mean, obviously, we've talked a bunch about how Jalen Duren can improve on that end too. So I think those are the things that it really hinges on, less so Asar Thompson. But in terms of how many games they win, yeah, they need to be a lot better on that end.
Yeah, and that's
All
one
right.
thing. Like I feel like the foundation. Oh, no, just with the defensive stuff and Jalen Duran, the Pistons like big man rotation isn't necessarily full of great defenders right now, and that's one of my concerns going into the season. Like a good defense often starts with an anchor in the paint. So, how much potential is there for Detroit to really improve defensively if Jalen Duren doesn't really pop this season? That would be one of my major concerns just on the defensive end is, yeah, what are they getting from the five or the center position defensively every night? But I guess we'll wait and see.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I mean, I do think since we're just talking about a potential, I mean, I think we do have to throw James Wiseman's name in there. Um, I don't necessarily expect it out of him, but he's an athletic guy and he seems to, you know, have a really great work ethic as well. So, if he can be a real good backup big defender too, like that would be huge. That would be big. So, let's jump on to the next one here from El Blues. He says, I feel like we freak out about the back-to-back games each year. Got to imagine that decent teams don't care. Is that a measure of how good or bad a team or you are as a team? What do you think?
Sorry, I was on mute. Yeah, look, I think this is a great point slash question. Like, there's definitely there are some not like every team's going to have schedule losses. That like that's what people call them, like schedule losses, where you play 4 games in 5 nights, and on that third or fourth game, like your team's just going to be out of gas. But everyone has those. So I think if to look at the schedule and freak out and think, oh, now Detroit's it's dramatically sort of altered the expectations of the team. I think that's a bit extreme. I think, yeah, I think ultimately every team goes through the same thing in the regular season. Obviously, Detroit have the most back to backs, but like I said in the opening, like I would imagine there's multiple teams that have 14 back to backs, and then a whole host that have 13. Like, and there's probably no one that has less than 12. Like, it's not. I I don't think the schedule ultimately decides that much how many games a team wins and loses. And as we also said, there's going to be teams, more veteran laden teams that come into Detroit on a back to back. They're just going to rest their players, their star players. They're not going to play their old players, 75 plus games. So that's where Detroit's youth plays into their hands. They can play all their players for the most part, the young guys at least, every game. They should be ready and up for that. So yeah, the schedule, I think it's a great point. And yeah,
Yeah, no, I agree. And like, I mean, like you said, right? Like the team's got young legs, so hopefully they should be able to handle the back-to-backs. I can't imagine, or at least I would imagine that a bunch of 22-year-olds are going to be a little more spry on that 11th back-to-back than the, 30, 31-year-olds. And just in terms of like, does the difficulty of the back-to-backs on your schedule or the tight weeks on your schedule kind of indicate how good or bad you're expected to be as a team? I'm not sure. I mean, I guess I'd be interested to see the data on that one, but I think I saw that the Clippers even are gonna like travel the most miles this season, and then usually that's a trophy reserved for the Minnesota Timberwolves. So I think that people think the Clippers are gonna be halfway decent. I don't want to say the schedule's totally random, right? But I don't think it's as uh leaned towards the good teams getting it a little bit easier as sometimes we make it out to be. Um,
for
do you
sure.
have any more, or would you want to move on to the next one?
No, I'm good. Let's move on.
Sounds good. Next one from our guy John Buck again. He had a couple in here, so we appreciate you, man. Thanks for throwing in these questions. But what do you think about replacing Wiseman and Bagley with Steven Adams?
I think I think Memphis's GM would have to be on some drugs to make that move. But um, Stephen Adams is one of the best screeners in basketball. He's an excellent offensive rebounder, and yeah, I'll be down for that trade. Just off the top of my head, without like the only thing with Stephen Adams, he has been pretty injury prone, but I guess the players you're sending out have to as well. So, um, yeah, I would love this trade. I think for Detroit, just in a vacuum, without considering contracts and everything.
Yeah. No, me too. I mean, Steven Adams would be a for sure, at least expectation wise, upgrade over what they have at the backup five position. Obviously, there's a lot that we don't know with Wiseman and Bagley, so I don't want to totally throw them out. But Steven Adams is a really great, proven veteran big man who's good on both ends of the floor. So I think he'd be a pretty huge upgrade to this roster. But like you said, I can't envision a trade where they get Steven Adams from Memphis. I don't think it's happening. All right, we got another one
Next
here from
question.
John Buck. See, this is what he was putting a ton in there. I appreciate it. Um, this was more like a statement, but I want to get your thoughts on it. So he said, I can see Ivy starting, but I think he and Cade should play apart more than together so that they both play next to a veteran more. And I think that's an interesting thought, especially now that they've got Monte Morris in addition to Alec Burks on the roster.
Yeah, I think we definitely see that. Like, I think they start together, and I would guess they'll close together. I'm not sure what Monty Williams sort of if he ran a lot of three guard lineups in Phoenix, because say Monty Morris and Cade have it cooking in the fourth quarter, I could see him going with, like, I know after watching Dwayne Casey, if he had a bench guy that was really playing well, he would empower them and close the game with them. Obviously, his rosters weren't always filled with a heap of talent, so that also factored in. But um, yeah, I think it's an excellent idea. That's why I like the Monte Morris signing so much. Is he complements Cade and Jaden extremely well in terms of shooting, providing that playmaking, especially alongside Jaden. I think Jaden can still thrive alongside Monte. Um, so yeah, I love that statement. I think we see a lot of lineups where Cade and Jaden are split up. Um, so it'll be interesting to see how Monte sort of deploys all his guards because he has a lot at his disposal right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And then just before I respond to it, circling back, John Buck mentions Adams actually a free agent next year. I would love to spend money on Steven Adams next offseason. So let's just get that out now. If he doesn't resign, I am on board. But in terms of Ivy starting and then kind of splitting them up there in the rotation so that Ivy can get some lead ball handler minutes, I think it's a pretty good idea. Honestly, I'd be a fan of it. I don't want to see it, I guess, way too much. I'm not super high on Ivy's potential as a pure, point guard, right? I think he needs to be a guy who can get some buckets and score with another ball handler next to him, or at least that's kind of how I envision the rest of his career in Detroit playing out. So, in terms of like a legitimate 50-50 split, I'd be more against that. But yeah, I mean, getting a lot of minutes, or not a lot of minutes, but getting a decent chunk of minutes each game where Ivy's running the show with the bench unit, I think that could be a lot of fun, especially if you get a lot of shooters out there around him and next to him to spread out that floor and let him really weaponize his speed. Um, so yeah, no, I mean, I think I agree with it. And then, like you said, Monte Morris playing next to Cade could be a lot of fun. Could take a lot of pressure off Cade. Uh, just to with how little he turns the ball over and how he can run the show too. Someone to actually get Cade some buckets, which would be fun to watch. So yeah, I'd be all over it.
All right,
You
next
cover our
question.
next one. I know
Sorry,
we're on a
guys,
delay.
we
I
have a
just
bit of
don't
a
want to jump
delay.
yet.
So
Yeah.
yeah, no, next
Oh man.
question.
It's all right. This is just the live stream of Wi-Fi issues. That's what we're going to be known as by the time the season starts, Jack. Next one from Ain't Nothing Better Than the Big Cheese making his return. Can this team go on a 4-game win streak this season? How about 5 or 6? Would be curious when the last time a Pistons team actually had a winning streak that long. So, do you remember one last year? I really doubt it last year, but
Last year, I can't imagine it was any more than 2 wins in a row, and I feel like they would have only done that once. But the winning streak that'll come to the front of mind for I feel like most Pistons fans recently would be sadly that 2014 or 2015 run after they cut Josh Smith and they won like 7 games in a row. I feel like they had a 5 game winning streak in that season where they started 14-6, which I believe was the 2017 2018 season. And I feel like they started 4-0 in Blake Griffin's crazy All NBA season where I think that was 18-19. So they're the winning streaks that come to mind for me. Yeah, I would love a winning streak. I'd love winning. Like, yeah, we've spoken about this. I've forgotten what it's like to support a basketball team. I actually don't know what it's like to support a basketball team that you go into every game thinking, yep, they can win this. So, but hey, if they got a couple of 4 game winning streaks this season, I'd be ecstatic.
yeah, no, I agree. And I mean, I do think that this team probably has the talent if they can stay healthy to go on a 4 or 5 or gosh, God forbid, even a 6-game winning streak. Like I think it could happen, and stranger things have definitely happened, right? I think even last year, I don't know for sure, but I feel like I'm remembering a 3-game win streak sometime before January. Like I think they've gotten close, even though they obviously didn't have a great year last year. So yeah, I mean, I think it's possible, and they definitely have the talents. Need some things to come together. Need the defense to improve. All these things that we've been talking about all offseason. So yeah, fingers crossed. I would like to watch a Pistons team win. I'm with you, QT. It's been a while since we've had a very good Pistons team to root for. So yeah, 100%.
Yeah, you can move
All
on,
right, I'm gonna
Wes.
move on to the next one. Yeah, I'm gonna move on to the next one. This is from our guy Blues again. Are you guys surprised at all by the national reaction to Cade this offseason? And I think he's probably just referring to it seems like everyone just forgot about him outside of Detroit, and then now they're all excited about the Pistons again because they remembered that he's a pretty good young player.
Yeah. I yeah, think I was surprised. I think I was surprised after Team USA stuff. Obviously, that sort of I feel like kickstarted the conversation around Cade and the hype, I guess. And I assume there'll be some more following these Rico Hines runs, just at least on like from a Twitter standpoint or social media standpoint. But yeah, I am surprised because Detroit has so often gone under the radar, and they haven't had a guy like Cade on the roster in I don't know since Grant Hill maybe Jerry Stackhouse like I don't know someone who could be like that sort of mid 20 point per game scorer who's sort of true face of your franchise. Um, like I know they had the going to work team, but I feel like that was like by committee. There was chance in Big Ben, but that was more like 3 to 4 guys who were the face of your franchise. Um, but yeah, I've been a little surprised, like even just hearing on some like national podcasts, like the USA runs, but um, yeah, it's been nice. I can't complain. It's nice to hear the Pistons discussed throughout the off season in particular. Gives us something all to listen to, some new voices. So yeah,
Yeah, I agree. And YouTube user spot on. We did have it with Blake Griffin for exactly one season and not a single game longer. But back to the question, I was really surprised by it, honestly. I don't think we've talked about this yet. I was really surprised by it only because I remember the insane hype that he had coming into the draft. I could remember reading on Twitter how insane the Pistons were for considering Mobley and Green like at all. It was just so obvious that Cade Cunningham should be the pick. Like he had so much hype. He was the guy before Wemby that we were reading most hyped since Zion or LeBron, right? Like he's got the most franchise changing or whatever, right? So given all of that positive momentum he had, and he did have a good rookie year, and he did have a good, what was it, 10 games that he played, 8 games that he played before being out for the year. Like, I was just shocked that he out of sight, out of mind that quickly. I was just surprised. He had so much hype on him. I'm glad it's all back, though. I think he deserves it. I think he's going to be real good, but I was very shocked.
like there was all that hype around him, and like he obviously struggled a little bit in his first month in the NBA. But like this Pistons roster has just been like it was a full on tear down. It's been spoken about so much, but there wasn't much around Cade when he was drafted. I think we all thought Sadiq Bey might have been like something. There was still hope with Killian, but ultimately those guys, yeah, there just wasn't a lot of talent around him. Whereas like some of the other rookies have come into a bit better situations. Some might say, well, if Cade is as good as if he's going to be mentioned in the same conversation as Zion, well, he should be having a Zion impact. But Zion came into a Pelicans team with Brandon Ingram, Lonzo Ball, Josh Hart, Drew Holiday. So I feel I wasn't all surprised to see Cade sort of out of sight, out of mind because there's really prior to last season, like in his rookie season, there's nothing else to talk about on Detroit apart from Cade. So, and he was sort of struggling. So, but yeah, anyway, love the national attention. It's been cool. And yeah, just for the sake of delay, Wes, you can move on to the next question.
Sounds good. All right, I really like this one. This one's from Ain't Nothing Better Than Being the Big Cheese again. If you had to prioritize these areas to improve for Jaden Ivey, what would they be? These areas in what order, right? In what order would you prioritize these? Finishing improvement, ball handling improvement, defense improvement.
I would go ball handling first. Defense will help his finishing at the rim because I feel like he had a lot of situations last season where he's sort of taking off on awkward angles and just trying to leverage his athleticism every single time, which is a lot of just straight line drive where he just got himself into trouble because he didn't have that ability to sort of create off the bounce, like attacking at the rim. So I feel like ball handling and finishing go hand in hand. And then defensive for me, that's number two, because I really like. I think it's going to take like Jaden Ivey another season or two just to get to being a league average defender, maybe more. Like, but I just want to be a work in progress. But if he can just every night bring it on ball, fighting through screens, just really not sort of taking possessions off. Well, there's going to be times where players are just gassed, but yeah, on ball defense is something. Off ball is a bit more of a long term play, but if he can improve there as well, that'd be really cool. But yeah, just to recap, for me, it goes ball handling, defense, and finishing third.
So I think, yeah, the only difference then between how I'd rank it and how you ranked it, I'd still have defense second, but I put finishing first. I think he left a lot of points out on the court last season, right? Like the number of layups that he missed that he probably could have made, and I think he's already shown that he has the touch to make, right? Like he probably could have got a little bit closer to 18 or 19 points per game instead of the 16ish that he ended up at. Like he left a substantial amount of points out on the court. So if he can finish at the rim at a better rate, up that percentage, that's going to go a long way to help the scoring numbers. And obviously, if the scoring numbers go up, are going to help the team as well. It's going to help the shooting percentages. I think that's just going to kind of have a domino effect and really positively affect his offensive game. And then, like you mentioned, I mean, at least being able to improve as an on-ball defender would be nice, so that you can take Cade off the best guard scorer, as long as it's not Steph Curry, who does a ton of damage running off ball like a maniac, right? Um, like I feel like if Jaden Ivey can improve as an on-ball guy, you might be able to put him on a guy like Zach LaVine and feel okay about it. That'd be really nice. That'd be really good to be able to have. And then, I mean, his ball handling, maybe I'm in the minority, but I thought it was functional last year. Like I thought it was fine. I know he lost the ball a few times, but I didn't look at his ball handling as a massive negative or anything. It was kind of neutral. And I guess this might link into me not expecting him to be a point guard, where I don't think he's going to be the primary ball handler a lot when he's out on the court. But I am totally fine with him being a functional to slightly above average shooting guard level ball handler. He can get to the rim in 2, 3 dribbles. He doesn't have to do any of the fancy stuff. I'm cool with his ball handling kind of where it is, at least into next season.
No, for sure. I think that's totally fair. And I think for me, the thing with Jaden's athleticism and why I would like to see him improve his ball handling is because I think he has like an amazing first step, which is going to get him by the first line of defense.
Mm.
But I feel like it's that in between where I don't think he has that explosive athleticism in the sense of like a Russell Westbrook or Derrick Rose, where they can rise up over the top of guys like consistently. Like I know he's got it within him. Hence why, like, maybe I'm factoring footwork on drives and adding like Euro steps and spin moves. Maybe I'm sort of adding that into ball handling. So maybe
Oh,
that's the wrong
fair.
way
Yeah.
to phrase it or group it. But I really want to see him get more creative with his drives. Like, I can't recall seeing many Euro steps or spin moves from him as a rookie. I feel like it was just a lot of straight line stuff. So, um, yeah, but that's what I sort of factored into my decision making. But yeah, he left a lot of points on the table. Like he would just blow layups in transition. Like he just definitely
Mhm.
right there. He left like at least a field goal a game on the table.
Yeah. No, it was, gosh, I
We're
don't
good
want to
to
get
move on.
lit up for this, and I'm not comparing the two players at all right? But some of Jaden Ivey's misses at the rim were just shades of Brandon Knight when he was in Detroit, and that
I
wasn't
knew you
something
were
I
going to
thought I'd
say
be
that.
remembering for a while. Yeah, I don't like. I'm not comparing them, right? Jaden Ivey is a far better prospect than Brandon Knight was, right? At any point in this process, they are not the same at all. But they're both very fast, and they both can get a little bit out of control by going too fast, and then the ball just kind of ricochets off the backboard and misses the rim entirely. And you're like, what was that? If he can fix that, which I
Yeah,
think that he can, he's got the mental makeup to do it. He's got the work ethic to do it, and he's far more athletic than Brandon Knight ever was. So like that plays into it as well. Much stronger of a guy. So like I said, not comparing, but if he can finish that little shades of Brandon Knight issue, it's going to be a good 2-ish points more per game, I think, for him on average, and that'd be huge. That'd be huge.
definitely.
All right. Last one, unless anyone's got any more questions to throw into the chat. This is from our guy QT. Which non-superstar do you feel would be the best fit for the Pistons at power forward? He says beef stew is an option. Love it.
I if I'm going throughout the whole NBA, like, so I'm gonna preface this by saying, if say Jalen Duren becomes like an above average defender at the five, like
Mhm.
I really like Jeremy Grant. That mold when required, weak side rim protection. I know his rebounding isn't great, but you have Asar Thompson, Cade Cunningham, and Jaden Ivey, who are all relatively big for their position and can crash the glass if required,
Cade.
particularly Cade and Asar.
Yeah.
So someone like Jeremy Grant, like I know, like that mold. And look, Cam Johnson as well. He's a nice option at the four. Just that complementary scorer who can shoot from three, create a little bit, and then help out and be pretty solid defensively. Um, they're obviously hard to find those types of players, but yeah, they have a handle. They can sort of create off the bounce. I love Beef Stew, and I hope he does become that four man, but I just don't think he's got the handle and the part starting at the four long term. Hope I'm wrong, but yeah, Jeremy Grant type for me.
So I'm gonna go with the guy I mentioned very, very briefly earlier in kind of our intro section, and that would be Laurie Markkinen, because I think he can be a legitimate. I mean, last year was the first option on a fairly good Utah team, but I think he could be a legit second option on a really, really good team. And just pulling up his stats from last year, he averaged almost 26 points a night on only 17 shots, right? Like he was ridiculously efficient. Over almost 8 threes per game, 39%. He shot 50% from the floor. Like, and he's an okay enough defender. He's not a total liability on that end. So I wouldn't say he's a superstar at this point. I think you could probably say he's a star. He was an all-star last year. But getting a guy that on any given night can give you 26 while also shooting almost 40% on really, really high attempts from three and scoring the way, just in general from the floor that he can. I think that takes a lot of pressure off of Cade and Ivy to score. I think it opens up their games. Obviously, it's a really, really good shooter that sticks out onto the court, right? Like Cade and Ivy, I think, are good shooters, but Markkinen is next level of a shooter. He's basically a taller, better defending Bojan Bogdanovic at the four, like in my head, and probably better finishing as well because he's pretty athletic for the type of player that he is. So I would be all over getting Laurie Markkinen somehow. He's on a ridiculously cheap contract though. I've got it here, so I'll pull it up because I pulled it up for earlier. But he's got 2 years left at only 18 million per season, like ridiculously underpaid. So I guess if he were to tell Utah next offseason that he wasn't coming back after the deal, that he didn't want to re-sign and all that, maybe you could get him, but you'd be giving up a
Yeah,
pretty penny to go get Laurie
crazy.
Markkinen and try to convince him to stick in town. So yeah, but that's my guy. I think Laurie Markkinen would be a perfect fit. Oh,
That's
did
a
we lose
really
you?
good
You're back.
shout from you. And like you mentioned it there, like he's really athletic. And I don't know if that's something he's in. Yeah, I was just talking about Larry, and I like how you pointed out his athleticism. Like, and I'm not sure if that's something he's improved upon since coming to the league, or we just never got a chance to see it in Chicago and maybe with the Cavs a little bit. But yeah, he's a really good athlete and can get above the rim, finish. Like, yeah, I like that scenario you lay out. Like, I can't imagine he'd want to come to Detroit, or I feel like there might be better packages potentially. But he's definitely the sort of guy you trade for like next off season if you can and sign him. So I really like that.
Yeah, like that. He's one of those guys because the contract is low enough where like I would over in an off season where you can trade a first round pick. Like I would give up quite a few assets to make a run at Laurie Markkinen to try and keep him around for a season. Because he's also, I think he's only 26 right now. I think he turns 27 during the year. So like even after this next contract, he'll be turning 29 or 30. And his game's so predicated on shooting, like the athleticism's a bonus. I think he's going to be good for a long, long time because he was also a bit of a late bloomer as well. Not a lot of mileage on the tires. Um, yeah, so there's my pick, Laurie Markkinen. But that was the last question. So unless you got any thoughts on that subject or any other questions that we want to bounce around here, I think we could close it out.
Yeah, I think we're good, Wes. I think we're good. I feel like from next week's episode, we're gonna have some Rico Hines footage
Yes,
of the
that would be fun.
team from UCLA. So we should have some stuff to talk about then. But until then, thank you to my co-host Wes. Uh, thank you to Sean Corp, the managing editor of Detroit Bad Boys, for allowing us to do this show every week. And special thank you
Sure.
to everyone in the comments, everyone with plenty of questions for us to keep us going throughout the doldrums of the off season. So big shout out to you guys. But until then, we'll see you next Thursday or Friday night. We've got to decide to talk more Pistons. Peace.